Welcome to round 6 of the 2019 Pokemon Trading Card Game Regional Championship here in Greensboro, North Carolina, brought to you by trollandtoad.com. Trollandtoad.com. Enter in the code Greensboro to get 10% off of your next deal. So, we've got round 6 coming up, and it looks like it's going to be an interesting one. But first, have you seen anything, heard anything crazy popping up nearby?
The two 5-0 players, I got a frog in my throat. Two 5-0 players right now are in fact playing Hitmonchan, similar to what we saw Zach Lesage play last week.
Yeah, that's right. We heard about there being a Hitmonchan mirror, but decided we might hold off on that. I mean, it's got its own interesting little quirks to it, but there are also some interesting matchups at the quote-unquote lower tables, which is kind of an exaggeration because they're all really high up at this point. I mean, there's a lot at stake, and so, of course, the action going on in tables 2 through 4 is just as important as the action going on at table 1.
Absolutely. Ryan Antonucci playing kind of taking a page out of Noah Bujak's book from Toronto and playing a Zoroark GX Garbodor deck.
That's right. And we've also got Lance Bradshaw playing the Pikarom deck, which I think not too long ago we were talking about underperforming pretty hard in Toronto, but doing very well here at around the end of round 3, round 4. I was seeing there was still a substantial number of them near the top tables, and it looks like that's still the case. So it seems like it's made its comeback.
Yeah, it's as we mentioned how cyclical things can be. If nobody's teching for it anymore, it could be poised to do pretty well. Interesting tech cards here in Lance's list. Couple Jolteons.
That's right, and we've got different varieties of Jolteon. We've got Jolteon EX, the older card with the ability to block damage dealt to it by basic Pokemon. And we've also got Jolteon GX, the very fast, aggressive, hard-hitting Jolteon as well. So Eevee from Sun and Moon lets you automatically evolve when you attach a lightning. Search your deck for a Pokemon that evolves from Eevee with that energy type, put it on top. So it's dealing fast damage, it's making a big difference early on, and especially with 4 copies of Electro Power, it's applying a lot of pressure really quickly as well.
Yeah, looking over Lance's list, it looks like 3 copies of Pikachu Zekrom GX. Obviously, the core heavy hitter in the deck. Jolteon GX with similar attack to Buzzwole GX's Jet Punch doing 30-30 is pretty good, especially with Electro Power when you can hit an egg, for example, on the bench, 60 to the front after an Electro Power and still chip an egg off the bench. So wouldn't be surprised if Lance was able to get a couple cheeky knockouts like that.
Yeah, especially if we had a situation where Ryan had a really slow start at the beginning of the game, where you could get turn 1 Jolteon, theoretically, do 30-30, then do 30-30 again, knock out 2 Pokemon at the same time.
Absolutely. Our players are set up. Looks like Lance will be going first.
That's right.
Discuss real quick Zoroark GX, Ryan's list, playing the Klefki, playing the bench barrier Mr. Mime, which might come into play here in this matchup, especially with that Jolteon GX. Roadblock Sudowoodo, Supernatural Dance Oricorio, a lot of the usual suspects that you'd expect in this deck.
Yeah, although their application in this matchup really isn't particularly significant, but a little bit of damage here and there could actually turn the tide. So we've got a lone Shaman start for Ryan. Not ideal at all, especially considering he only runs 2 copies of the card.
And in the active spot there for Lance is that Jolteon EX. Great because it does have free retreat. Swift attack won't be able to take advantage of Shaman's lightning weakness because of how the text on that attack reads. However, Flash Ray, the way to insulate itself from basic Pokemon, might come into play in this matchup. Or
yeah.
excuse me, won't come into play in this matchup.
Although the funny thing is, he theoretically could start getting aggressive with it, if nothing else, to threaten a knockout here or there. Now, it's not going to really be able to do that much against Zoroark GX, obviously, but it could at least get a couple cheap prizes that way. Although, it looks like we've got Lance getting that Flash Energy on early.
And I believe that is the Pikachu Zekrom GX Rainbow Rare that we've got on the bench. That's going to also pick up a Choice Band. Shaman's going to set up for 5 cards. Electro Power down. Trainer's Mail. Finds a Max Elixir. And Lance is not taking his foot off the gas pedal. jumped right into the fast lane and is just going for the gusto here.
And Kirk, this is something that I anticipate will be an issue later on in the series, but it goes back to what you were saying about the metagame being cyclical in some ways, where it looks like Ryan actually is lacking in special energy hate in his list. I don't see Faba, I don't see Enhanced Hammer anywhere on there, so that flash energy looks like it's just going to stick. Now, granted, Lance doesn't really have much of a fighting weakness to worry about, but just the fact that he can attach a special energy without any fear is kind of concerning, because in this format, in the expanded format, generally you should be anticipating and be ready for some sort of hate, but if it's never going to come, then that's not really a problem.
Let's try and catch up here. Lance drops another Electro Power. Sycamore's away. His hand draws obviously 7. We see Trainer's Mill come down, grab Computer Search. Silent Lab in there. That Max Elixir as well off of the Sycamore. After the third Lightning Energy, I think you know you got it.
Yeah, and at that point he's like, okay, let's not waste any time. Let's just go ahead and get it dealt with.
So Pikachu Zekrom GX on the bench getting built up real quick. Another copy of that card comes down, and Lance goes on ahead and passes. That Jolteon EX in the active with that free retreat, going to make it very easy for a follow-up attacker to step in and start chucking bombs.
Yeah, and if I'm Ryan, I'm not feeling great. Like, I'm feeling even worse about the Shaman start right now, because you were put in the awkward position where if you do anything but Sky Return, then you're essentially leaving 2 free prizes on the board for the rest of the game until you potentially play another Shaman. But Sky Returning is not that desirable of an effect right now, and with all that energy on Pikachu and Zekrom GX, Lance is probably going to be able to get a knockout next turn.
All right, Ultra Ball for Ryan, discarding red card and Ultra Ball. Taking a look at the grip, trying to figure out Tapu Lele Wonder Tag, immediately grabbing Sycamore. Maybe Ryan's 1 copy of Bridget prized, or doesn't have a follow-up supporter to use for the next turn and doesn't want to be just completely ice cold.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, and if he is going a conservative path with Sky Returning, then it would make sense to open up the bench a little bit here, play additional Pokemon that you could consider bringing up after the Sky Return. And with that Oricorio going down, he has an easy option. So, and yeah, I think you were correct here. That was a good call, where it looks like it's just a Sycamore down to 7. No Bridget is an option, no real follow-up from there. The question is how many Zorua, if any, or outs to Zorua he got off of these 7 cards.
DC coming down on the Shaman, as you mentioned, very important to go ahead and Sky Return that back. Battle Compressor grabbing a couple Prop Eggs. Lance only a couple energy away from being able to use that big Tag Bolt GX and get that kicker where it deals 170 to the bench. And Tapu Lele GX, even if you pick up the Shaman, is prime for the pickings on that one. So something to be aware of, and I'm sure Ryan's taking into consideration.
This is painful. I mean, granted, it's nice that he has 2 Execute in his discard pile to use propagation for, so that Ultra Ball isn't nearly as devastating, but it still feels like a slow start, to say the least.
Ryan going to play down in the 3rd copy of Ultra Ball from his side of the board, getting rid of using those 2 propagation eggs and pulling the Ditto Prism to the bench, giving himself a little bit of malleability into whatever he would like to evolve into. Roadblock Pseudo Udo. Choice Band coming down on Shaman. Let me nug that for 60.
Yep. And that Shaman jumps back into the hand, and at the very least, Ryan is immune from getting benched due to Tag Bolt GX. So we've got a very awkward board right here. If anything happens to that Ditto, then Ryan will not be seeing a Zoroark for at least a couple turns.
There's absolutely, if I'm Lance, I'm not feeling any pressure or fear that this Pikachu Zekrom GX can be counter knocked out, especially with the flash energy. I'm announcing full blitz, taking a knockout, putting my 3 energy onto my Pikachu Zekrom, and I'm getting ready to Tag Bolt next turn.
Yeah, and this is what we have going on with 2 Pokemon swarming without any problem at all. 2 Pikachu and Zekrom GXs charged up, so even if this one goes down, it won't be much of a problem. No, Ryan does have a counter attacker coming up, but even if he uses, say, Energy Drive for 120, that's not really getting Ryan that far. And it looks like with the cards in Lance's list, he has some ways around it. With the single copy of Cassius, for example, where Cassius, an older card from the X and Y base set that lets you shuffle a Pokemon and all cards attached to it back into your deck, works kind of like AZ, works kind of like Acerola, but is more resource efficient. So the application, the use here in Pikachu and Zekrom is that you can just follow that up right after you use Cassius with a full Blitz and then keep that going. So you're healed, you're not worrying about anything, you just keep on hitting, and you're golden.
Ryan attaching double colorless energy to Tapu Lele, attaching that choice band as well, and electing to Sycamore, I believe, off of the Versus Seeker. Ryan going with an interesting game plan here, going to try and soften up that Pikachu Zekrom a little bit, maybe put it within knockout range of that Zoroark GX on the follow-up.
Yeah, and that's just about the only thing that Brian can consider doing right now without completely giving up the game, because he still needs to set up, and losing that Zoroark GX too soon would be a bad idea because it's his sole source of draw power. But,
Fourth Ultra Ball
yeah.
coming down with one egg, and I believe that's Ace Trainer. Take a quick look here. Yep, one copy of Ace Trainer going down to that Ultra Ball. And it looks like Trubbish is going to come down for Ryan. Maybe going to start eyeing up Trashalanche Garbodor, maybe something to step in and be able to do some big damage.
Yeah, that's a possibility. With all the items that have gone into the discard pile, it applies not only some pressure period as an alternate attacker to Lele or Zoroark GX, but it's a non-GX attacker as well. So it's got it essentially gives Ryan more life in the game by putting Lance on a new prize exchange where he has to draw more prizes than he actually has to in order to win the game.
Just a energy drive for Tapu Lele doing 130 damage. Is that right? One, one, two, three,
yeah,
4, 5.
Yep, that's right. Just I think it's just because of the choice band.
So 130 damage goes on that Pikachu Zekrom. Lance elected last turn after the full blitz to split up his energy attachments here. So he has another Pikachu Zekrom on the bench ready to go. Taking a quick look at the hand. He's been sitting on that computer search for a while, and also would be nice to know how many items are in Lance's discard, because I think that's going to be incredibly relevant here in a short manner of minutes.
Yeah, and looks like our table judge thinking the exact same thing. Looks like our players thinking the exact same thing, where they're eyeing it down. One thing that they have done in previous rounds was just put the dice out right near the top of the table so we could see. Looks like there were about like 5-6 items in Lance's discard pile, though. So decent damage, but not enough to carry the game by itself.
Lance probably going to eye up maybe a Guzma play, knock out the Zoroark GX if he can find a Choice Band or an Electro Power, and maybe take out that Shaman and end this game.
Yeah, and having to play the Shaman is very painful here, but Ryan's probably thinking, you know what? I just got to play to my outs, and I got to go ahead and give myself the best chance here. And usually that's going to be through end, where if Ryan is able to end this turn, then, I mean, if Lance has the top deck to win, then so be it. But it at least gives Ryan the best chance to roar back and make a comeback.
Ryan, I think on the same page as you, going to take a look. I believe we're resolving a Pokemon communication here.
That's right. A newer / older item card from all the way back to Heart Gold, Soul Silver, but legal in all formats because of its recent re-release. Item card lets you shuffle a Pokemon back into your deck to get different Pokemon. Neat applications with Execute with its propagation ability from the Plasma Freeze expansion, because you can pull it back and shuffle that egg back in. No problem.
Ryan does get that N, gets that Trashalanche Garbodor all kitted up, ready to start swinging if necessary, and probably taking a big 3-prize knockout. Lance, on the other hand, does have Tagbolt GX ready to go. And with 3 prizes left, Lance has got to be feeling pretty comfortable here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the board's pretty clear. There really isn't a way around for Ryan to win, because Lance hasn't used his GX attack.
And benching that Shaman was all the difference in the world. Doesn't
Yeah.
force Lance to actually have to chase anything else. Can quite simply, if his Pikachu Zekrom in the active gets knocked out, quite simply step up, Tag Bolt GX, and eat that Shaman on the bench for those 3 prizes.
Yeah, pretty much. So about the only thing, and I would feel very uncomfortable doing this, but maybe the only thing to keep myself from losing this exact turn is to bring up a Pokemon. Although, you know what? Mr. Mime, Plasma Freeze. Plasma Freeze Mr. Mime's going to shield that bench damage.
Always piecing it together, one second at a time. Good look, Mr. Calchexis.
Although it still, I mean, it doesn't really change the fact that he's about a card away from winning. So I like that. I like what Ryan's doing. He's at least giving himself a fighting chance, but he's got to get something more going on. And I would love to have a second Garbodor to be able to follow up somehow, but unfortunately, I just don't think he has the cards to do it.
Bench space not an issue because of Skyfield. Rescue stretching up Zorua, I believe. And Lance going to take a quick shot at taking a look at what that attack does.
Yeah, good call. There are a whole bunch of different Zoruas that are legal, especially in the expanded format, where we have about 7+ years of Pokemon trading card game history, all in the same format. There are some that are more often used, like the Paralyzing Gaze Zorua that you can find in the Mega Charizard premium decks. And there are others that are not as commonly used, like this Emerging Powers one with its, I think that just does 30 and flip a coin of tails does nothing. So it can deal a bit of big damage with a coin flip, but other than that, it's not really significant.
Ryan taking a second to figure out which attacker he wants in the active. He goes, Zoroark GX, let's lay it in. Ryan is beating. Let me take a knockout here for 3 prizes. Lance got a Pikachu Zekrom all ready to go.
Yeah. But the question is, does Lance have the follow-up? And it's not feeling like much of a follow-up here. This is feeling like a dead end.
Yeah, so Lance plays only 2 copies of Choice Band. And
I stand corrected. We've got the Tapu Lele.
Does play 2 copies of Choice Band, one of which just went down with the other Pikachu Zekrom. Would love to see it here and still announce Tag Bolt GX, although not getting the kicker bonus onto the bench because of that bench barrier, Mr. Mime. Taking a big knockout on the Zoroark and not having to 2-piece it is a pretty good place to start.
And also, it's a really interesting gamble not to commit to that Garbodor for the previous turn, because what Ryan is counting on or hoping for is that Lance will not get the knockout off of this Chorus, and that's looking like a pretty thin deck. That might even be his entire deck, so if he has the out, he's got the out. If not, then that Garbodor is just hanging, chilling out, and ready to come back and hit the Pikachu and Zekrom for a bunch of damage.
Lance just making sure it doesn't overdraw.
Taking accounting of everything here.
Yep, a couple trainers mails in there, so if Lance didn't find the Choice Band yet, gonna get a crack at it. Or an Electro Power. Anything to get over that 210 HP hump. Lance looking to take a big knockout on Zoroark GX, and I think if you're Ryan, based on how they played, if Lance gets the knockout here, do you just pick it up and go to game 2?
If Lance gets a knockout here, you know what? It isn't completely out of the realm of possibility for Ryan to win, so I might hang on for a little bit, especially if in my hand I have an N or an out to N. So we got
more items that Lance plays, the more dangerous.
Yeah, and there's that Electro Power like you talked about, and the computer search.
Okay. Taking a quick look at Lance's list, seeing if there's anything juicy we can pick up with that Electro Power, or excuse me, with that computer search. Lance already did Chorus for this turn, so supporters are out of the question here for that computer search.
Yeah, and to be honest, a lot of options are out, period, because by getting the computer search, he has to. Although, you know, to be fair, he does have a Mr. Mime and a couple other cards that aren't going to make as much of a difference to discard. Oh, and we've got another Trainer's Mail coming down. That's more items, and that's making that Garbodor even more of a threat.
Computer search, pitching.
Oh, you know what I think it might be? I think Lance might be digging. Yep, that copy is Silent Lab. He's digging for the Silent Lab to shut off Mr. Mind Plasma Freeze and get that Tag Bolt GX for a knockout on the bench. So he's got the Electro Power and he's got the 3 prizes to win. So Lance is up a game.
That takes a lot of the guesswork out of it there, Mr. Kettler. Digs a little bit. One copy of Silent Lab. Was able to do a check. Big Colrus. Find out how many outs he had. Hit so many trainer's mails. And for added insurance, found the computer search. Second trainer's mail. Finds the Electro Power. That is all the pieces to the puzzle. Cobble it together. Tag Bolt GX. Give me my 3 prizes.
Although it was really cool to watch because even with all of those cards, he needed both pieces. He couldn't function off of just one or the other, where he needed the Electro Power or the Choice Band, and he needed that Silent Lab. And so what we saw were a couple sophisticated things going on. The first thing, the most important thing, was being able to get a large amount of cards off that chorus and being able to Trainer's Mail slowly thin his deck out and give himself the best odds of getting that damage with the stadium because you only run one copy of it. So, of course, getting the computer search and holding off on it was a good plan. That doubles his odds effectively of getting the Silent Lab. So he was able to get all the pieces and win the first game in a pretty good fashion.
Yep, Tag Bolt GX flexing his muscles. And again, Pikachu Zekrom really showing why it deserves a spot in this expanded format. Had a rough weekend last weekend, but everybody was teching for it. Maybe everybody assuming everybody was going to keep him at home. And here Lance is, 401 with Pikachu Zekrom ready to go.
Yeah. And you know what? I think I haven't heard that much about Night March being in the tournament today. When you've walked around, have you seen it?
There's always the core crew of Night March players, but a lot of people tended to pivot over to Blastoise, thinking it has a pretty good Trees matchup, has a pretty good Night March matchup, and taking it from there, leveraging last week's results to try and have this week's success.
Right, and so I think that everything's lined up for Pikachu Zekrom to make a bigger difference for this tournament as opposed to last week's in Toronto, where Night March has a little bit more hate against it. I think that's the biggest thing, where I lose to X, but X loses to Y, and it seems like there's just a lot more Y for this tournament.
Absolutely. And as we mentioned, Ryan kind of taking a regular cut of the jib here with Zoroark Garbodor, a little bit more known quantity within the format, a little bit more well vetted, and having some great success too.
For sure.
Our players are flipping some cards over, prizes are getting laid out, and we are without a content producer.
And it looks like, well, I tell you what, we can go ahead and just talk about it right now. So we've got a lone execute start for Ryan. So it's secret rare, which is a little bit of a plus, but at the same time, it's definitely not the best thing to have.
Ryan, starting off with the Battle Compressor. Juniper, Bridget, that always signifies to me, might have a Versus Seeker in hand to just burn real quick, use a quality resource on that. Egg in the active, not where Ryan wants it to be.
Yeah, although he's got another egg in the discard pile off this Battle Compressor, and by grabbing the Bridget, he's fetching it, finding an alternate way to be able to get some basics into play. Not the most common way to trigger your Bridget in the expanded format, but it is a way where normally you would get a Communication or an Ultra Ball or a Tapu Lele to fetch it. But getting multiple dangerous attackers on board all at the same time. That Ditto can be anything it wants to be. Ditto's like, you know what? My parents told me I can grow up to be an astrophysicist. I'm going to be a Zoroark.
Ryan has to be happy not having to bench a Tapu Lele GX to get the 3 Pokemon on the bench this time around. Obviously, Tag Bolt GX putting in a lot of work. Wants to maybe avoid getting those Shaymans down and those Tapu Leles down. Easy knockouts. Ryan just passes after filling up his bench 3 more Pokemon. And Lance is off to the races. Ultra Ball, Mr. Mime, and Electro Power going to be going to the discard. So Lance can find 1 Pokemon of his choosing.
You know, even though I'm feeling a little bad about that lone execute start, it's not that bad, where we have exactly the type of setup that Zoroark normally wants. It isn't super ideal, but it's decent to the point where you've got your turn 1 Bridget, you've presumably got your draw power coming up, And so even if you have an egg that's getting in the way of, say, maybe your normal turn 2 attack, you're still going to get pretty much everything you'd want on board.
Lance playing down a Trainer's Mail after getting another copy of Pikachu Zekrom. Taking a look at the hand, taking a look at the Trainer's Mail, going to reveal one Thunder Mountain.
That's right.
Reduces the attack cost of your Pokemon by 1 lightning. Prism Stadium as well. Can't be field blowered. Has to be bumped by another stadium.
That's right. And granted, Ryan has a lot of options to be able to counter that. He does run 3 copies of Sky Field, so it's not going to be too difficult to bump that. But it is additional pressure, and it's going to force Ryan to play a stadium prematurely.
Lance drawing 2 cards off Shaman. And discards off of a Sycamore. Doesn't play another card. Plays Sycamore. Discards Sycamore, Sycamore versus Seeker, and amongst some other things. So interesting that Shaman did come down.
Oh, and he got the lightning on the last
card,
one.
On that 6th card, that Max Elixir hits. And Lance is starting to power this Pikachu Zekrom up on the bench.
Still contemplating where he wants to throw that additional attachment, if any.
Zeraora is on the bench. Zeraora GX with I believe it's a Thunderclap Zone, giving any Pokemon with Lightning Energy attached free retreat. So always a gem.
Yeah, although 1 card off of being able to get the perfect combination here. And fun little thing we have to note, where even though that was the stadium card, Lance actually moved it over to the Lost Zone, because the only way you can bump that mountain is with the stadium. You can't actually field blower it. It won't be affected. So just shifts a little over to Lance's left, a little further down on the screen, and that's the Lost Zone.
Yep, Ryan going to play an N. Each player getting 6 new cards.
Ooh, and a red card in Ryan's hand.
Right, just another way to disrupt, to kind of get Lance down, pinned down on some resources. We see the first trade using the egg and the discard. Ryan announced it. Judge going to help him out, make it a little bit more visible. So everybody's on the same page that he has used 1 trade so far. Trade
Correct.
number 2, getting rid of a Skyfield. Interesting choice there. And that is a full grip for the kid. See if Ryan can get some attackers going.
That's an even fuller grip with that red card. So bit of disruption going on. It looks like Ryan wants to apply some damage this turn. Bringing up that Zoroark GX with a big hit. Not necessarily enough for the knockout unless he gets just all the right basics. He can use propagation to increase his damage output, but I don't know if that's worth it right now, so maybe just a 1 hit would do it. Now, I don't know. Yeah, and that's what he goes for. He just goes for that 1 hit to put some damage on, although he's leaving himself open here for the first blood from Lance.
Lance using a Trainer's Mail has a couple options there. Decision tree. I saw Lightning Energy for sure. Can't quite see the other 2. Lance really good at flicking those cards, keeping us on our toes, figuring out what he's got going on.
And goes
Chooses
for the
Colress. It's going to be a Colress for 6. Definitely worse things out there.
And he's got the energy switch in his hand too, so he can get some damage on the board right now if he wants to.
Gonna retreat, gonna energy switch. I like it. Colress. I like saving that Max Elixir. You don't have a prime target to really be suiting up if you do hit for that lightning energy. Just shuffle it back in the deck. Hopefully you can get a little bit more powerful attacker that you want to bolster up with the Max Elixir's ability.
Exactly, and we can go ahead and wait for a little while. Just be patient. You don't have to rush and throw all your energy everywhere. And this actually gives Lance a better option here where he can just get the guaranteed thing, charge up his Pikachu Zekrom GX on the bench with some energy, and just swarm that way.
Ultra Ball feeding in another Pikachu Zekrom. So Lance, if he announces the full Blitz attack for 150, we'll be able to power up for 3 lightning. Now, however, if Lance finds Choice Band Electro Power, one's already on the board, so that's 1 played. If Lance finds another Electro Power or a Choice Band,
he's got a knockout on this guy.
He's got a knockout on the Zoroark GX with full Blitz. So not only taking the first 2 prizes, but also powering up a backup attacker if he wants it. Or if there's just no fear in Lance Bradshaw, power up the Pikachu Zekrom in the active, and then start throwing your Tag Bolt GX Haymaker.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, both are pretty reasonable options, especially, and it looks like Lance is about getting to that
So
point.
Lance fell just a little short of that extra 30 damage modifier. So
Yeah.
elects to Tag Bolt GX now, get the energy off, get the choice band
And just
off,
not
get
even
this.
bother with
No.
having to energize anything because he knows he's not going to get knocked out here. He doesn't have enough items in the discard pile. He knows that Ryan isn't going to surprise him with some sort of random fighting attacker. He feels okay.
And not to mention, Lance's follow-up turn could play a choice band and Electro Power and just take another knockout with Tag Bolt GX and rinse and repeat. Excuse me, not full blitz. Pardon me, for 210, and really keep the pressure on Ryan.
Yep, and it looks like Ryan is going to go ahead and even though there aren't enough items to get a one-shot, at least apply damage pressure with that Garbodor with Trash Avalanche. So he's going to deal a lot of damage, no question. Not necessarily enough to wipe this Pikachu Zekrom GX off the board, but set up a later knockout and just keep up the hand disruption, keep up the ends, keep up maybe the Ace Trainer. That way you at least give yourself the best chance of winning.
Ryan putting down the Trash Lash Garbodor, putting down a choice band, putting down a Psychic Energy versus Seeker N. And that's the recipe of the day for the Zoroark Garbodor's deck. N, 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 and I'll keep getting the resources I need through the power of Zoroark GX. You're going to stumble eventually, and that's when I'll take over the game.
Exactly, and it basically just says, okay, opposing deck, you need to play something to basically just deal with whatever I have. This is why decks have to run multiple copies of things like Shaman or Nguru, obviously not in Lance's list, but you get the picture. Playing things that will let you recover in some of the most difficult situations with 1 or 2 card ends.
Ryan bringing up Trash Lance Garbodor. Lance going through the discard. How many items do I have in there? That is the true question, and we will find out shortly when Ryan announces attack. Dowsing Machine, Prop Egg going to the discard.
Dowsing Machine for the Battle Compressor.
Interesting. I wouldn't have anticipated that, but Ryan definitely has a line of play in mind.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to thinning out his deck not just for this turn but future turns, so he has access to what he needs. And discarding the Mime. You know, it's pretty interesting discarding all these basic Pokemon that might eventually help him hit a damage threshold.
Ryan really coming up with... So that makes sense. Compress the Zorua because you want to get another one on bench.
Okay. Yeah, and there was a lot of desperation in having to get to that point. It's very roundabout having to use your A-Spec to use the Battle Compressor to get the Zorua with the Rescue Stretcher. That took 4 cards as opposed to the normal process, which is just bench the Pokemon.
So 200 and... no, that can't be, right? Is there a choice band? Okay, 210 damage. Quick math, how many items is that? 9?
That would be 9 plus the choice band. So unfortunately, a little too short for Ryan, but it at least keeps Ryan in the game. So
Yep.
I'm down with that play.
Yep. Oricorio also looking to style. Maybe can ping a couple damage around. Eat the Pikachu Zekrom up front, and maybe do some more heavy damage on the Pikachu Zekrom in the back. Supernatural Dance, powerful attack. Lightning Energy comes down on another Pikachu Zekrom. Lance elects to Colress, going to be getting 10 cards? 9 cards, excuse me.
Yeah, well, decent number at any rate. And one thing that I would be a little concerned about might be... well, no, I was about to say that I'd be concerned about hitting too many Lightning Energy on this Chorus to 9, but I don't think the odds of that are that likely. You would have to hit just about all of your Lightning in the deck, so as long as Lance has 1 left, then he can full blitz a single Lightning onto that Pikachu Zekrom on the bench and be in good shape.
Yeah, because he managed to attach one, not too far off from getting the 3, Lance needs to keep his string of attackers going.
There's that Silent Lab again.
Silent Lab coming down, Prop Eggs turned off. amongst things like Shaman and Tapu Lele GX. Lance was leaning over, looking like going to announce an attack.
And there's our full blitz for a knockout on the Garbodor, bringing Lance up one more prize and just a couple Pokemon away from winning the game.
Lance down to 3 prizes. Ryan with 5 left.
Okay, and there's that roundabout play paying off in dividends for Ryan, because now, as opposed to just sitting around floundering with one Zoroark, he's got 2. So it doesn't look like it's going to be a terribly disruptive turn with that Colress for 9, that counter Colress to Lance's Colress. But what Ryan can do is he can set up a knockout on this turn, either through the Workorio, assuming that Lance has enough Pokemon in his discard pile, or a Zoroark, get knocked out next turn, but then be able to respond right away with an end to boot.
Ryan using Colress to draw himself a hefty hand here. Taking a look. I wouldn't mind seeing another Trubbish come down. I think, you know, being able to hit those big numbers, a Garbodor right now isn't too far off of being able to take a big one-hit knockout on a Pikachu Zekrom.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And, I mean, pretty much we're pretty close to that point. One thing that I would be interested in, though, so he follows up. It looks like he's hoping to basically do the same thing. So he's looking to follow up with the Trubbish. Looks like, oh, wait a second. Was that Zorua just into play, or was that already in last turn?
That was in last turn, I believe. Yep.
Okay. So it looks like we got 3 Zoroark on the board. And not really hitting that follow-up Trubbish, not really going. Oh, and it looks like.
And here's the judge.
And it looks like that might have been the case. It looks like it looks like that Zorua just hit the board this turn. Again, that's what we were talking about last turn, where he went through all sorts of pain to put that second Zorua into play. Would have been nice to have the third trade, but nope, not allowed.
But now Ryan, unfortunately, just kind of stuck with a Zoroark GX in hand. I must have phased out, missed that when that Zoroark came down, and Ryan probably wishing that he would have a Trubbish on the bench or in his hand if one was available in his deck for him.
Yeah, and I didn't get a chance to see. Is he sitting on that double? It looks like he's ready to play the double. It's just it's not the ideal situation for him, because if he's I like this. I like this a lot, actually. So this is gonna kill multiple things with one stone. It's good. Well, first it's going to kill the Pikachu and the Zekrom with one stone.
Yep.
And now on top of that, Ryan's got that Shaman evacuated. He has that Shaman ready to be used at some point. Although I don't even know if I'd want to use it. I think I'd want my opponent to leave his own Silent Lab in play, so that even though it looks like both of the Shaman for Lance have been used, but at least there wouldn't be some roundabout way for Lance to reuse one of those Shamans, like a Cassius and then Ultra Ball for the Shaman.
Yeah, so Lance just played Versus Seeker for Cassius, put the damaged Zekrom into the deck, shuffling that up, drew the Choice Band off the top. If Lance has Choice Band Electro Power, he's just taking a knockout here anyways.
That's right, and he's sitting on one Electro Power. I'm just waiting to see if he's got the other piece.
I know, he top deck a Choice Band for the turn.
Okay, yeah, so he's just ready to play it. He's just ready to commit to it.
That gold Choice Band, and he has the low rarity Choice Band in there. It's doing the same thing, but it's just not as stylish.
Yeah, and it's interesting where sometimes out of necessity you only have so many cards and have to keep rarity mixed. And one thing, let me go ahead and cut myself off there, because it looks like that Max Elixir just failed. So he's going in ham. He's going in all in with this one Pikachu Zekrom right now, although I'm sure he's going to be looking to, as some wise people I know, looking to style, get that energy attached to the other Pokemon on the bench, but it's not quite the same because he isn't swarming Pikachu Zekrom GX the same way.
Full Blitz, going to hit for 210, take a Zoroark GX knockout, and we're going to have another, is that Zeraora?
Yeah, it looks like it. I'm trying to make sure. Yeah, it looks like Zeraora.
And I believe the attack on that, 160, can't use the attack the following turn. Over to Ryan's turn. Has the egg with the floatstone in the active. Field blower going to knock off the choice band. Trubbish finally coming down. Would have loved to see that last turn.
Yeah, unfortunately for Ryan, the GX attack bolt GX has already been used, so he doesn't have to worry about a random 170 to something on the bench. So he can bank on one of these Zoroarks just surviving for a little while and swarming the 2 Zoroarks. So he can bring up a Zoroark, hit, bring up another Zoroark, hit again, and ideally knock out if it doesn't involve something like Cassius.
We see an N. Lance going to shuffle in 3 energies on Zeraora. Judge just taking a quick confirmation there. Ryan Antonucci with an N play.
And with Ryan, there really is no ideal combination of cards that would result in the knockout this turn. So he's committed to having to bring up a Zoroark, committed to hitting O, and he's doing it just Sycamore trade, discarding the Sycamore for trade.
Trade 2 more times. Silent Lab obviously shutting down the other egg that we know is in Ryan's discard.
That's a very painful discard right there. That looks like that. Yeah, that's a special charge. So Ryan is limited to what he can do right now, but he's thinking, you know what, I have enough special energy to carry myself through the game. Let's just go ahead and go for it. So one card in, 1 top deck. How's Lance going to keep that alive?
Well, Lance set himself up pretty good. The N obviously going to change the dichotomy of his hand, but before does have another choice band and still has some Electro powers in the deck. So if Lance got maybe a big draw supporter here, could get those last 2 pieces, and could potentially make a play on Zoroark.
Yeah.
And look at that.
He's got the
Ryan flashes the Guzma. It's a flurry finish. Lance couldn't get to that Zoroark GX on the bench to take those prizes, take his last 2 prizes, and Ryan rallies back with Zoroark GX.
He pulls it back. He pulls the comeback. Now, granted, and I think I'm overusing that at this point. I mean, I feel like there's enough time to maybe make something happen especially with how fast Pikachu Zekrom GX is moving and how these +3 turns, which, I mean, let's be real here. We're going to go to those +3 turns either way. But I feel like there's just enough time to make something happen. Both players, though, they have to have the exact same sense of urgency. You only have about 11 minutes left on the clock. Both really want to get that win. I mean, a tie doesn't hurt them too bad at this point, but the name of the game is to A, win the tournament, and B, qualify and move on to day 2. You need 19 points or better to do that, and a win is going to get you a lot closer than a tie.
Absolutely. These they're going to drop when they drop back into this game. It's going to be about 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
Pikachu Zekrom definitely has the ability to go bigger, faster, but don't count out Trash Lance Garb if Lance gets a little too willy-nilly with the items. That damage creeps up really quickly. You saw the Garbodor step up and hit for 210 on turn 3 or 4. Kind of out of nowhere. So something Lance is going to have to keep into consideration. I need to go as fast as possible without throwing the game to my opponent.
Exactly, and that's the danger you get into when you're in these rush scenarios where both players, they're thinking, okay, you know what, I really have to figure out a win before the end of time, but I don't need to do something so hasty that I'm going to lose it for myself. And it's not even something as uncommon as, say, a bunch of items for Trash Avalanche. It could be something as simple as playing cards in the wrong order because you're in too much of a hurry to get everything done, where you're looking to, say, discard the wrong card at some point, and you accidentally discard your supporter card that you're going to use to draw.
Here we go. Ryan finally starting with a reasonable Pokemon this card.
Yeah, that's right.
Zorua. Pikachu Zekrom in the active. That same Rainbow Rare. Pikachu Zekrom showing up almost every game. Lance with another one on the bench. Trainer's Mail #1 finds. Was that a Cassius? I believe it was.
Couldn't really make it out, but not a bad start for either player. If I'm Lance, I'm feeling pretty good here about being able to move on and be able to just get some attackers going.
This just in, we just got a message from the table. 3 minute time extension here. So there's actually 12 minutes ish just under 12 minutes here for these players, and that is plenty of time for them to focus in, get it done, and have a true result to this game that isn't a draw.
Right, so our real time we're working off of is effectively about 11 and a half minutes, plus some change. So it's going to give players enough time, and I think I just saw something flash on the screen just now. That might have been if I understand correctly, was that a prize penalty that I saw? Is that incorrect?
Double attachment, game 1 for a penalty.
Okay.
Would have resulted in game loss.
Okay, so it looks like there is for this game 3.
This is game 3. Game 1, double energy attachment.
Okay, understood. So it looks like there was a double energy attachment all the way back in game 1. And this is something a little interesting behind the scenes. There actually were a couple judges behind here just watching the replays, making sure that everything was lined up. They did catch the penalty. They were able to assess it. And so that's the reason why we had the extension applied, as well as all of it corrected. So there was an issue earlier. It's already been dealt with. And so we're just moving right along, even with about 10 and a half minutes left.
Just like to see this game 3 be clean. Big turn by Lance, with all the hubbub. Did manage to get Tapu Koko Prism down. Dance of the Ancients there. 2 Max Elixirs hit. Natural attachment for the turn. Lance already has a Pikachu Zekrom ready to ravage Ryan's board. Ryan going to try to do his best impression here and maybe get a Zoroark GX up.
Yeah, and I felt the hesitation in Ryan discarding that red card. He probably wanted to keep it as a bit of disruption because he knows what's coming with that big, fat, full blitz, or even Tag Bolt GX in a little while, because he knows it's going to deal a lot of damage. He knows he's going to fall way behind, and that's usually his key to victory in this matchup, is having the disruption ready to go.
So Ryan, obviously his goal to get to those Zoroark GXs first. Tapu Lele, Wonder Tag, Bridget, Ditto Prism, Bench Barrier, Mr. Mime, protecting his Pokemon from that Tag Bolt GX attack with the added energy, and a Zorua. So Lance, great opportunity here to step up, maybe take a big knockout on a Tapu Lele if he has Guzma. Maybe even goes after the Mr. Mime and tries to derail that to set up a double knockout later on.
And I think that'd be a fine play, getting that knocked out the old-fashioned way as opposed to having to address it indirectly through Silent Lab.
Back over to Lance. Ryan with a decent setup here. Ultra Ball. Lance is going, digging. Pulls Zeraora, I believe, to the front. Again, Thunderclap Zone, allowing Pokemon with a lightning energy attached to them to have free retreat. Flash energy, of course, as it's on the Pokemon, counts as a lightning energy. Thunder Mountain, reducing the attack reducing the attack of your attacks by 1 lightning. So Lance definitely could be able to come in and hit.
Yep, and I like Lance's balance here. We were talking about this earlier, the sense of urgency balanced out with being cautious as to what you're doing. So he's charging up, he's attacking, he's moving quickly, and Ryan, I mean, I don't know where Ryan's point of view would be on this topic too, but if he wants to win, he's going to need to get multiple Pokemon into play very quickly.
Klefki coming down. Ryan elects to Chorus for 8. Shuffling in. Again, the timer says 5, but from when we got the extension, I believe it's actually closer to 8 minutes.
That's correct. And so with effectively 8 minutes to go, plus the +3, I think these players have just enough time to get something going on. Worst case scenario, it could be one of those awkward spots where it goes to a point where we could effectively figure out who wins, even though it would be a draw. But Ryan's got plenty of options, and again, he's going to need to start having something going if he wants to be able to close this out and make the comeback.
Ryan playing Pokemon Communication. Shuffling back in, I think it was a
Trubbish.
Or a Choreo or a Trubbish.
Yeah, it was a Trubbish. She's got that Shaman additional setup going on, literally and figuratively. 4 more cards, get more Pokemon into play, deal some slightly bigger damage, but the moment he puts that Shaman into play, it's going to become a liability and a way for Lance to get some easy prizes.
Rescue Stretcher Zorua back on the bench. We see that Trubbish hiding out down there. Just half of it showing. Just a setup for 3. Ryan might be driving for a Zorak GX, maybe driving for a DCE, not helping us out too much with the angle of that hand. Doesn't hit the double. I think that's why you
Ugh.
see the Psychic come
Yeah.
down, and certainly don't want to be feeding Lance another Zorua. That's kind of your draw engine here, but it looks like that's what he's priced into.
Yeah, pretty much, and he's stuck losing a single prize at bare minimum this turn. He might even lose more if Lance is able to pull off a great combo with Silent Lab and Tag Bolt GX.
If I'm seeing Lance, Lance sees Ryan play that rescue stretcher, burning that resource early. Lance might want to try and go for the Mr. Mime now, and just get an.
Oh, it looks like he's for the Trubbish, yeah. So he sees that Trubbish as a threat, wants to be a little loose and free with the items, so he just goes for that knockout and doesn't even worry about Mr. Mime. He might even be sitting on the Silent Lab for all we know. And
Another prize for Lance. 3 more energy attached to the Pikachu Zekrom on the bench. And that is one strong tag team there. Ryan, considering the promotion, goes with Ditto Prism. Zorak GX. And there, I believe there is a Zorua under Ryan's prizes to the bottom left-hand corner of the play space there.
yeah, that's right. I see. Yep, it's a Zero right there. So we've looks like we've got another big Colress coming into play. He gets that egg just to give himself additional draw power and just enough to be able to apply some more pressure. By looks like after that, yeah, that's 2 knockouts so far for Lance. So I think what Ryan's hoping to do is to replace that Trubbish with everything that just got lost last turn and negate the turn that Lance pulled off.
I think Ryan gets 11 here. 3, 6, 7, 8,
Oh,
9, 10, 11.
Yeah, and we've got the Trash Lance sitting in Ryan's hand right now, but do we have the Psychic Energy? If that's what he's going for, even.
Ryan only plays 2 copies of Psychic Energy, so there's only, it's either tucked in the prizes or it's tucked into the deck. Judge hand coming through.
Oh, and it looks like there might have been a miscounting here. That's it, or maybe they're just double checking.
Yep, Judge just double checking, pointing at the egg, making sure it was on the bench, and that's clear. I think that's resolved.
Oh, and he's having a hard time. He's not sure where he wants to put that. Oh, yeah, that looks like that Zorua was too new on the bench, so he couldn't evolve it. And he was really hungry for that Psychic Energy, so he did not evolve. Oh, and there's the Garb.
Oh, he found it.
And there's the Psychic Energy.
He said, all right, Lance, how many you got? We're going to find out here shortly. Trash Lance Garbodor, although making an appearance, hasn't been leveraged very, very well. Just falling shy of those knockouts. It is pressuring Lance's three prizers fairly well, but Ryan's going to need to find a way to close the door on this one.
Correct. So he's going to need more follow-up, and it's going to take him more than just about 3 or 4 turns to do, unfortunately.
I love how Ryan in his deck has a Rescue Stretcher, also has a copy of Super Rod. So if Ryan can find a Super Rod, can recycle part of the Trash Lance Garb line, get a couple of those Psychics back in, get a Psychic or 2 in, and then maybe continue that string of single prize attackers, while Lance has to try and trudge through using his big tag team GX
Yeah,
attackers.
exactly. I think you got the perfect train of thought for this situation, and that's what Ryan's thinking right now as well.
Ooh.
With that Trubbish on the bench. And we are out of regular regulation. If you're just tuning in with us, there is a 3-minute time extension, so it's nothing official. I've got my own stopwatch going on right here with the end of that unofficial regulation, with the 3-minute time extension the 2 players are working off of. So I won't know with 100% certainty when the actual time will end, but I've got it running right now and let you know soon. So it looks like we've got that Tag Bolt GX going on and a couple knockouts on the Trubbish and the Garb.
Lance really seeing the way that Ryan has the angle to come back into this game is off of the back of Trash Lance Garbodor. Plays the Silent Lab down. Nothing fancy, not taking 3 or 4 prizes, but just taking 2, but 2 of the most stressing attackers on his board state, and just getting those out of there.
Right, and at this point, I don't really see the opportunity for a comeback win for Ryan. It looks like what he's hoping for is, if not, I mean, like, I just don't, I don't see it. looking for it, so he's trying to disrupt it. I missed something. With Silent Lab.
Yeah, he ultra balled for Tapu Lele, put it down Wonder
And that
Tag.
was an illegal search. That was an illegal search. You're right.
The ultra ball was legal.
The Ultra Ball was legal, so he could search his deck.
But didn't
so
do-
he can't get the end. So I think it's a harmless error.
Correct. I think he's just going to get a little verbal warning here.
Yeah.
A verbal slap on the wrist and say, "That's cute, bud, but you can't grab N. You can have Tapu Lele if you want, but you can't grab N."
Yeah, and unless there's something else I might have missed here, I think that like a little slap on the wrist would make the most sense. I'm not going to second guess it for sure, though, especially with the previous penalties involved
Play on.
in these games.
Ryan's going to look at his hand. I think, hoping that there's an N tucked away in there somewhere.
And there's just a little
I
delay
think the discussion
here
is. I think the discussion is Ryan might have dowsing machine in his hand, so could have dowsinged for the sky field, played the sky field, then Tapu Lele, then end. But order of operations is important.
Yeah,
exactly what you mentioned. Play quickly, but don't play yourself out of the game.
Exactly.
And I think that's what Ryan just ran into.
And he's already committed that Lele drop, so it is already on the bench. No takesy backsies unless your opponent's just willing to let it happen. That's the rule. That's the way that it works. So, and now with this little bit of confusion going on, I'm not even sure if
Headphones are off, so we're going to quiet down a little
yeah.
bit. I think the judge may be discussing a prize penalty here. If it is just a 2-prize penalty, Lance only has 2 prizes left, and that's curtains for our friend Ryan Antonucci here in round 6.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is we're already working off of one-time extension, so it looks like Ryan's just showing Lance the cards here, and I think that would make Lance the winner if I'm not mistaken.
Yep,
We don't have this ending by time.
I think Lance is coming down with a W. Based on the procedural error there, we're going to have somebody from the booth go over to the judges and find out exactly what just happened there. But I believe the judge found that was a very egregious error to the game. Wonder Tag tried to find N under Silent Lab. That is a non-starter, maybe issued a 2-prize penalty. And that's what's going on. And I'm getting a big nod from the judge here, and I think that's exactly what we've got to happen. And Lance, of course, with 2 prizes left.
And that does it. Yep.
We're out of here for round 6. Lance Bradshaw, 5-0-1. Heck of a start to a tournament. One more win into day 2. Got 3 rounds to do it. I like his chances.
Yeah, and that was pretty dramatic, to be honest. But we won't be completely gone because we've got, looks like, a winner view in just a little bit. So stay tuned.
Thank you.